G'day and welcome to another episode of Shit Hotels of Australia. This one is a little bit different because this time we'll also be exploring some of my family's history around the Hobart suburb of Battery Point. This is my last night in Hobart before returning to Queensland, so we're going to go on a little bit of reminiscing of my family's history. This is St George's Church in Battery Point. It's directly across the road from the first flat that I lived in, and pretty much across the road from the first flat that I lived in with my fiancée Sonia. But the church here has got more significance because it is one of the three places where Percy Harrison's name is listed in memory. So let's go inside. And here we have the names of all three of the Harrison brothers who served in the First World War: Claude, Percy and Bill. Battery Point is one of Hobart's oldest suburbs, originally a home to whalers, shipwrights and labourers. And for 4 generations of my own family, Battery Point has at times been their home. So we're going to start with my great-grandfather, Percy Harrison, whose name you just saw on St George's Church. And we're going to explore a little bit about Percy's history and then eventually end up with my own. So let's go for a walk around Battery Point and the surrounds and explore this beautiful suburb. In 1907, Percy married Mary O'Neill, whom he referred to as May throughout his life. They were married here at St David's Anglican Cathedral, the main cathedral in Hobart, which was in fact a little bit interesting as Percy and his family had always been Catholics. So there's no record of why they chose this church, but from here Percy's marriage to May began. This corner of Murray Street and Macquarie Street has quite a significance to my family. Not only were Percy and May married in the church behind us, but James spent time in the Hobart Penitentiary, which was in the buildings behind us, or located with the buildings. And my first job was the Department of Premier and Cabinet in the building behind us at Franklin Square. In fact, the little windows at the very top floor was one of my offices. Well, I'd forgotten how brisk a Hobart sea breeze can be. We're standing now in this little patch of green, which is called the Errol Flynn Reserve, after the famous Tasmanian Hollywood actor Errol Flynn, who lived just behind us here in Battery Point. At the time that he lived here, Errol was most definitely the second most famous Flynn, second to his father, TT Flynn, who was one of the first professors of biology at the University of Tasmania, and who was the subject of my father's last published work, TT Flynn, Not Just Errol's Father. Directly across from the Errol Flynn Reserve is a street called Queen Street. Now technically this is part of Sandy Bay, though the residents here, they like to claim that they live in Battery Point. Adds a few millions of dollars onto the price tag of their properties, I guess. After they were married, Percy and May lived originally with Mary's parents, but then they soon set up their first residence here at 8 Queen Street. And this was a house for a labourer. Certainly not a house for a labourer now. In fact, all of these little cottages are probably worth over $1 million each. In 1911, Percy and May moved to a house here, 39 High Street, Sandy Bay. Certainly didn't look anything like it does today. And shortly after that, they moved here across the road to another house on the other side of what is now the bustling urban shopping district of Sandy Bay. They moved to a house at 32 High Street. Percy's parents and his brother Bill lived close by in what was then a very close-knit community. Certainly not an affluent one like today, because Percy was still, according to the census, a labourer. When I first moved out of home, the first flat I ever rented on my own was a little flat here at 33 Cromwell Street, Battery Point. I do so on my own, but I did share it with quite a few hundred mice. After I finished uni, I hooked up with the amazingly gorgeous and batshit crazy Sonia, and together we moved into a flat on the top floor of the building opposite. Our next door neighbour was quite interesting in that our next door neighbour was Ray Groom, who at the time was the Premier of Tasmania. We didn't have many visitors, Son being a bit antisocial, but one visitor we did regularly get was a grey tabby cat, whom we christened Barry. And when we moved, Barry came with us. We later found out that Barry was in fact Sprite and belonged to the Premier of Tasmania. Percy Harrison was killed at an action called the Maze outside the town of Flare in the dying days of the Battle of the Somme. His body has no known grave, and so his name is commemorated only on the church, which you can see through here behind us, on the tree at Soldiers Walk, and at the Australian War Memorial, and on the Villers-Bretonneux Memorial to those with no known grave in Villers-Bretonneux in France. After she received notification of Percy's death, May and the three kids, including my grandfather Keith, moved to this place here, 45 Colville Street, just round the corner from the two places where I lived. Although whilst I lived there, I had no idea that this was where my family lived, and I wish that this place had stayed within the family. The reason I know all this is because of my father's research for the family history, and 2 days ago we said goodbye to my father at his funeral. He passed away aged 83. This is Creelan Street in Battery Point, where my grandfather Keith and his wife Jean lived just after the return from the Second World War. I don't know exactly which house number they lived in, but interestingly, Creelan Street is also the location of the car park entrance of the motel that I'll be staying in tonight, the Blue Hills Motel. Tonight I'll be staying at the Blue Hills Motel here on Sandy Bay Road with access from Creelan Street. This hotel has been here, or motel has been here, for as long as I can remember, and that's a bloody long time, because as long as I remember includes when I used to visit as a toddler my great auntie Greta, who owned a place just across the road in Albura Street. This motel obviously therefore dates back to the 1960s, and let's go inside and see what it's like. Right, so this is room 18 of the Blue Hills Motel. Looks like it's been had a little bit of work done recently, but they didn't quite get to it all. Yeah, so we've got queen size bed, table and chairs, cupboards, TV, fridge, Sydney 2000 official parlour, so I reckon the fridge is not exactly new, and we've got some windows that actually open. And I've got a horrible fear. It was 6 degrees in Dover last night, and there doesn't seem to be any heat pump. Bathroom, nicely renovated with an incredibly noisy fan, so we'll kill that. Walk-in shower, new basin, new toilet. As I said, it looks like they've been going to a bit of a trouble to do the rooms up, but they sort of haven't quite got there, and haven't quite got there on the stairs either, have they? But we'll see, what else have we got in here? So we've got a cupboard. Oh, we can turn the power off. That's interesting. I wonder if it's just this room or the entire floor. Pillows, blankets. What's in this one here? Kettle, capsules. Aha, we're saved. We have 2 heaters. Excellent, excellent. That's one up on the Big 4 tourist park. So, yeah, we'll see what night's sleep we get here at the Blue Hills Motel. Behind us in the Errol Flynn Reserve you can see what looked like to be a historic boat shed. In fact, that is the first fisheries research laboratory in Tasmania, and I think I'll get out of the breeze to tell you a little bit more about it. William Saville-Kent was the first dedicated fisheries scientist in Tasmania and possibly Australia. He held the position of Director of Fisheries in the 1880s, and this shed was the site of the first fisheries research laboratory in Tasmania, and just off the in the bay there was an experimental farm for oysters, the first European aquaculture site in Australia. Aquaculture is an industry of dear to my heart, and also to my father's side of the family. And if you've seen my other videos, you might have a clue about my father's background in fisheries. But my father was also an historian, and when he moved a large desk into his office on Old Wharf, he found in it some papers, and those papers were of William Saville-Kent, and they'd sat there for almost 80 years untouched. So my father started to research Saville-Kent's contributions to fisheries, and he published a book called William Saville-Kent, Savant of the Southern Seas, which is available to purchase online if you're interested. When I last was in Tasmania, the owner of this shed was appealing for help to restore it to commemorate its history. And it looks like those restorations have started, but it looks to me like it's one of those restorations like the axe that you had for 100 years. It only had 10 new handles and 5 new heads, because it doesn't look like there's much of the original building going to be left other than perhaps the roof. Battery Point is home to some classic old style pubs, such as this one, Shipwright Arms, better known to the locals as Shippies. And tonight I'll be having dinner here to catch up with my sailing crew that I haven't seen together for a bit over a year now, and I really miss sailing out there. Battery Point is also home to some absolute monstrosities of hotels, like this one, the Prince of Wales Hotel. I must admit I've had quite a few beers in there with yachty mates, including the fabulous Corn, who at times was not only the licensee of the pub, but the licensee of my boat. This restaurant here was once a Spanish restaurant, and coincidentally I'm wearing a shirt which throws back to that time when I raced a boat called the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expected us to win, but we did. And so one evening we organised a crew dinner here to celebrate our winning of the pennant. And I must say, the owners of the restaurant were not at all impressed when we booked a table under the name of the Spanish Inquisition. I bet you they didn't expect that.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition!
When I was in year 12, I had this unrequited crush on the gorgeous Jane Kay. I was just give my heart for her. And then one night in this coffee shop, which is now a Japanese restaurant, I actually got the chance to hook up with her equally gorgeous twin sister Robin. But I turned it down because I thought it'd be cheating. Christ, I'm an idiot. And now for the Shit Hotels of Australia instant coffee test. And I'm sure somebody must like this test, but I'm getting a bit sick of it. But at the Blue Hills Motel we have Moccona, which, as we've seen before, is supposed to be a cut above, but I won't drink it. And for the tea drinkers, we have Bushels. Once again, neither of these sachets have expiry dates, so we don't know how old they are at all, and I certainly won't be trying them to find out. And now let's check out the TV and the Wi-Fi. So I've logged into the Wi-Fi, which seemed to log in quite well, and we'll see how we go with a bit of the old Netflix. So we'll go home, and what do we watch? Capturing Cricket. Play. Bit slow, although I am downloading some magazines at the same time, which might have something to do with it. Let's try this when those magazines have already downloaded and actually be honest to the Wi-Fi.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
So the magazines have finished downloading, so now let's check the Wi-Fi speed on Netflix. And it seems to work pretty well. And now we'll check out the TV. It's a TCL TV, not particularly huge, and it does turn on, which is a bonus. Takes a while. And what have we got in terms of our channels? We've got free to air and nothing really else. So, TV, free-to-air channels, doesn't pretend to be a smart TV and then it turns out dumb. It's a dumb TV to start with, which is good. Doesn't promise anything more than it actually is. So, now a little bit more about the upkeep. We did notice the paint chips before, and if you actually pull back the blinds, you can see that it extends quite a way. And it's quite surprising that, considering all the work they've done to the rest of the room, that they haven't bothered to even attempt to fix this issue with paint chips and rust. Bit of cracked glass there. Over here with the new furniture, you can see this cord has started to wear away a little bit against that furniture. There's another little paint scrape over here. Someone's scuffed up against this cupboard door. In the bathroom, as I said, bathroom looks really great until you get to the bathroom door. I mean, really, come on. It's like, if you, as I said, if you're going to go to the trouble of doing these renovations and then including painting this door on the outside and providing new handles and then not addressing that issue, it's sort of like, you got to wonder. It's 10 to 5 in the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. We're right on Sandy Bay Road, which is one of Hobart's busiest roads. And so let's check out the traffic noise, admittedly through the open windows. It's not too bad really, but then check out the noise of people in the corridor.
Later that same evening.
It's going to be a great night. Well, this is me, the absolute idiot. I was waiting at the Shipwright Arms and the rest of the crew are actually waiting at the Whaler, which I've never heard it called the Whaler before. I do recall that they actually changed the name. It's always been Noppies. I've got no idea why I got them confused, but yeah, let's take a stroll through Battery Point. just wondering, all those labourers and shipwrights and seamen who used to live in these tiny cottages, they realise how much their properties would be worth today. How times change. These are Kelly steps, built so that famous original settler and whaler James Kelly could get from where he berthed his whaling ship up to his house. And they lead down onto Salamanca Place, which I'm sure you've all heard of, if not visited. So it's later in the evening now. I've just come back from dinner with my crewmates who I haven't caught up with for over a year. And interestingly enough, I could walk down the corridor and I could hear the noise from the TV from the room 2 doors up before I even got to my room. So apologies to the people in the rooms next door if you're actually overhearing me shooting this, but a bit of an update on the Blue Hills Motel. The rack rate tonight was about $110, so definitely within that shit hotels of Australia bracket that I'm sort of used to spending my money in. But there's a couple of things which have interested me since I returned to the room and looked around. First thing I've noticed is there doesn't appear to be a smoke alarm anywhere in the room. And it's not something that normally attracts my attention, except for the fire evacuation plan, which says fire evacuation plan, 2nd floor. And down here it's got the red dot, you are here. And I'm just wondering where I am, because there's no red dot showing where I am. Maybe that's not surprising, seeing that I'm not actually on the 2nd floor. This room is on the 1st floor. So the actual fire evacuation plan bears no relation to the actual corridors and fire escapes on the 1st floor of the Blue Hills Hotel, and the red dot marking you are here in room 18 is probably in someone else's room. So it's 9:30 at night, and whilst the traffic noise isn't any significantly louder than it was during the day, the fact that the walls have ears and my ears are hearing straight through these walls, the TV noise and the clunking, the noise in the corridor, just convinces me already that this is going to be an earplugs night. And fortunately, I've got the vibrating Fitbit. Well, no, I don't. It's over here being charged to wake me up in the morning, ready for my flight. But one thing I would like to say about the Blue Hills Motel is that this heater here is cranking out the heat, and certainly it's not going to be a cold night here tonight, and that's something to be thankful for. So the new table is not exactly new, considering these cracks and these dents that can't have happened in the last couple of years. And then the new bedside tables, that dirt in there looks fairly ingrained to me. So it appears to me that they've sort of started to renovate and renew this motel, and then maybe just given up. And further to my previous bit about the upkeep, coming back into the room tonight, I've just noticed something that I didn't actually notice before. Drawing the curtains, I noticed this, and this, and there's a little bit of a shiver going down my spine when I wonder exactly what is that? Surely it's not. No, it couldn't be.
The next morning.
So this park is the site of the gun battery that gave the suburb its name, Battery Point. And now it's time for the pirate score.
You are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
So first up, cleanliness and upkeep. Well, at first pretenses the room looked pretty clean, but after a little more of an inspection it was fairly grotty, and those white streaks on the curtains, I'm just going to say no more. And as for upkeep, well, it looked like it was a work in progress. Looked like they were in the middle of renovations, adding some new touches, putting a better light on a motel that had existed there for at least into the 1960s. But then when you looked a little bit further, it was like it was a work no longer in progress, that they'd simply just given up because that bathroom had been renovated, but that door had just been left to continue to rot, and the crumbling paintwork on the windows as well. So for cleanliness and upkeep, 2 stars. Facilities. Well, there was no cooking facilities. At least there was heating, and I must say it was warm. But I think in a Hobart summer, with all that glass, that room could have got pretty bloody hot. So facilities, 2 stars. Add-ons, there were none. 0 stars. Entertainment and Wi-Fi. Well, it all looked good to start with, didn't it? And that Wi-Fi fired up really quickly. The TV had all the channels, but when I actually came to use the Wi-Fi to watch the qualifying for the Portuguese MotoGP, on the KO app on my tablet, it just constantly stalled, dropping in, dropping out, and it took me probably 45 minutes to watch a 15-minute practice. So for entertainment and Wi-Fi, again, 2 stars. Excuse that sniff, it's a little bit chilly here on at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning. Bed and bath. Well, the bed was a bit soft, so I woke up with a pretty stiff and sore back. And the pillows, well, 1 pillow was too low and 2 pillows were too high, and so I ended up with a pretty stiff and sore neck. The bathroom looked nice until you looked at that door and then looked at the door bracket, which was held together by a cable tie, and the water pressure was pretty average in the shower. Toilet was nice, new toilet, but again, bed and bath, I can only give it 2 stars. And then the better than home bonus, well, you knew that wasn't going to come, was it, when you heard all the traffic and you heard the noise from the people in the room next door. So for the first time in over a week, I had to sleep again with earplugs. I guess that's in preparation for going back to Queensland. So no bonus. So that's a total for the Blue Hills Hotel of 8 out of 25. And just a comment on the Blue Hills Hotel, I mean, this suburb here of Battery Point is arguably the wealthiest suburb in Tasmania, and for a hotel plonked in the middle of Battery Point that has been there for, it's not as old as some of the pubs in Battery Point, but it's been there for a very long time. To think that it's become so run down and just not reflective of the suburb around it. So yeah, pretty disappointing night in a shit hotel. So 500 metres down the road from the Errol Flynn Reserve is the Derwent Sailing Squadron, and I couldn't get away without making a video about Battery Point and Sandy Bay without including this beauty, the one I left behind. I still own this boat. Last time that we took the boat to Airlie Beach, we won a race at Airlie Beach Race Week. It looks like I've taken the wrong boat up there, because up at Airlie I've got one of these, SB20. Well, we currently call it a shitbox. So that's where we say farewell to Sandy Bay and, in the distance, Battery Point. So if you've enjoyed this video, please click like, subscribe to the channel, and hit me up down in the comments below if you'd like more content about the area around the place that I'm staying as much as the actual shit hotel of Australia. Thanks for watching. So now we look at the actual area encompassed by this video. So first up is St David's Cathedral, where Percy and May were married. Then the Whaler, where I finally had dinner with my crew. Kelly Steps, where I walked down to get to the Whaler. And finally, the gun battery, where I filmed the pirate score. Next, we look at the area around Hampden Road, and further down here we see Shippies, where I thought I was going for dinner, and the POW Hotel, where my mate Corn was once the landlord, and then the restaurant where we checked in under the name the Spanish Inquisition, and finally the coffee shop where maybe I made my biggest mistake by turning down the advances of the gorgeous Robin. And getting our bearings there with Shippies again, my first flat in the back of this property in Cromwell Street, St George's Church, where Percy's name is recorded on the honour board, and the flat with Sonia, where we liberated Barry from the clutches of the Premier of Tasmania. And finally, 45 Colville Street, where May moved after hearing of Percy's death on the Somme on the 5th of November 1916. And again, to get a bit of perspective, there's those existing locations. We're now heading a bit further south. First up is Errol Flynn Reserve, the second most famous Flynn. And following that is 8 Queen Street, the first house that Percy and May set up. William Saville-Kent's lab was just here. And here is Creelan Street, where my grandparents lived for a short time at the end of the Second World War. And across the road being my grandmother's sister, Greta, and her family lived at Albura Street. And finally, we have the Blue Hills Motel here, bordering Creelan Street and Sandy Bay Road. And now further south, we've still got the locations of those previous places, but here is 39 High Street, now Sandy Bay Road, Magnet Court, where Percy and May moved after Queen Street. And then we have across the road 32 High Street, which is now Sandy Bay Road, the site of that pizza place. And finally, a place dear to my heart, the Derwent Sailing Squadron, where my Thompson 7-boat Temptation is located. When I first moved out of home, the first flat that I ever rented on my own was a little flat here at 33, what is this street?